I'm Star Wars artist Will Sliney, and today I'll tell the story of Star Wars' greatest hero and villain in one image. This will be a battle between the light and the dark, a piece of art that tells us the story of the Chosen One, Anakin Skywalker, and Darth Vader. This is Star Wars Illustrated, the evolution of Anakin Skywalker. Want a huge art tip? The single most important part of our drawing begins before we even touch this page, and that's the thumbnail. Thumbnails allow me to very quickly sketch out some ideas. Do I go from left to right like reading a book? That feels a little too boring. Maybe I could have Anakin fight Vader in a dreamlike sequence that the dark side cave would be proud of. Or what if we build out an image that balances out with the light on one side and the dark side on the other, just like this? Let's start out our image right here in the center with Anakin as we see him for the very first time. In the opening chapter of his life, Anakin Skywalker was enslaved on the desert world of Tatooine. Anakin had no father. His birth was believed to be the result of a mysterious midi-chlorian conception. Anakin and his mother Shmi were won in a pod racing bet by the toy Darien junk dealer Watto. Like all who were enslaved on Tatooine, both were implanted with transmitter chips that would detonate if they ever tried to escape. It was in Watto's shop where Anakin revealed an extraordinary natural talent for engineering. Even as a child, he could repair complex machinery, and from scraps, he built a protocol droid to help his mother, C-3PO. He was also a gifted pilot, the only human capable of pod racing. Anakin claimed he could see things before they happened, an early sign of his connection to the Force. Everything changed when Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn, one of my favourite Jedi, arrived on Tatooine after escaping the Trade Federation blockade of Naboo. Sensing something powerful within the boy, Qui-Gon made a wager with Watto. If Anakin won the Boonta Eve pod race, he would be freed. Against impossible odds, Anakin won. He gained his freedom, but at a terrible cost. His mother remained enslaved, and leaving her behind would become one of the deepest wounds in Anakin Skywalker's life. One of my favourite things about comics, particularly within the Star Wars universe, is the way that we can expand on iconic film moments. And because of that, this isn't my first time drawing young Anakin. With writer Greg Rucka and colorist Guru FX, in Marvel Comics Star Wars The Phantom Menace 25th Anniversary Special, we got to tell the story about Anakin, one that showed us more of what Anakin felt at that time, really diving into his hopes and fears. One really cool moment was when I got to draw a vision of Anakin's where he saw himself as a Jedi Knight. From before he even met Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. When I was designing this outfit for Anakin, I was inspired by some unused concept art by Ian McCaig from episode 1 made over 20 years ago, proving that a good idea never goes to waste. Here are some tips on the differences between drawing kids and adults. The obvious one is proportions. An adult head is much taller than a rounder young kid's head. While the eyes of an adult are around the midway point, a kid's eyes will be even lower so that the skull can fit an ever-growing brain. Also, did you know that when you're born, as a tiny baby, your eyes are about 70% of the size that they'll be when you're fully grown? That's why eyes look huge on a child. This one here needs a little scar. The tip of your nose is much higher as a child and it doesn't project out as far. Then, of course, as you get older, your skin gets burnt off in the lava pits of Mustafar and you need a mechanical device to assist your breathing, which we can draw just like this. The very first time we hear about Anakin in A New Hope, he's mentioned as being an incredible pilot. That always stuck with me, and I really like how we see that throughout the prequel trilogy and in the Clone Wars animated series. Alright, let's age up Anakin to the brash Padawan that we see in Attack of the Clones. After Qui-Gon's death at the hands of the Sith apprentice Darth Maul, Obi-Wan Kenobi feels duty-bound to honor his master's wishes and advocates for Anakin's training in the way of the Jedi, even though Yoda expresses grave fears about the boy's future. At first, their bond was formal, master and apprentice, but over the years it grew into something deeper. They fought side by side during the Clone Wars, becoming legendary generals and trusted brothers in battle. But beneath that brotherhood, tensions always lingered, a tension that Obi-Wan struggled to understand. Following an attempt on her life by apparent separatists, Anakin and Obi-Wan are stationed as personal protection for Senator Amidala, the former Queen of Naboo and an old friend of both Jedi. And it's here that it becomes apparent that Anakin harbours deep feelings for Padmé, which grew into a mutual love for one another. Their forbidden relationship gave Anakin something the Jedi could not: attachment, fear, and the desperate need to protect it. Sensing the conflict, Sheev Palpatine slowly began to manipulate the young Jedi, offering understanding where the Order offered restraint. As Anakin's fears grew, especially visions of losing Padmé, the divide between him and Obi-Wan widened. What had once been a bond of brotherhood slowly became a tragic misunderstanding, one that would ultimately and tragically burn their friendship to ash. Of all of our Anakins that we're going to draw, this is the one that should exude confidence. I want to reflect that in his pose, the brashness of a teenager who knows he's better at what he does than everybody else. We're drawing someone who doesn't have a care in the world, except for the nightmares. You need to be able to draw everything in comics, and I mean everything. Pretty much every script I've been given, I had to draw something new. To do it right, you often need to go and research how it works. For example, before I drew Anakin, I had no idea how to braid hair like this. But to draw it, I need to understand that the lines wrap around and under each other like this. Once I've drawn the pattern this far, it starts to repeat, and then I can get into the flow of wrapping them around. Depending then on how close we are to it, I can add in thinner lines within the clumps of hair. Let's draw on the real light in Anakin's life, his wife, and one of my daughter's favourite Star Wars characters, Padmé Amidala. I haven't shown her episode 3 yet. She's only 5. Padmé Amidala was one of the most influential figures in the final years of the Galactic Republic. Born in Naboo, she entered politics at a young age and was elected to the position of queen while still a teenager. Despite her youth, she quickly proved herself a capable and courageous leader. When Naboo was invaded by the Trade Federation, rather than surrender to her people, a teenage Padmé fought to reclaim her planet with the help of the Jedi. After her time as queen, Padmé continued serving her people as a senator in the Galactic Senate on Coruscant. There she became a passionate defender of democracy, ignoring threats to her own safety while opposing the growing militarization that would eventually lead to the Clone Wars. During this time, she reunited with Anakin Skywalker. What began as a friendship grew into a secret love, one forbidden by the Jedi Order. The two eventually married in secret, determined to hide their union from the political and Jedi worlds that would never allow it. But as war consumed the galaxy, Padmé watched Anakin change. His fear, anger, and manipulated by Sheev Palpatine pulled him towards the dark side. Padmé spent her life fighting to save democracy. In the end, she died giving birth to her children, but not without trying to save the man she loved. Her legacy as a champion of democracy and freedom for all would live on through the efforts of her and Anakin's twin children, Luke and Leia. If drawing Anakin is about drawing arrogance and confidence, Padmé is much more anchored. She's someone who's held in place by the weight of her responsibilities. Though in this scene, when she's seen in the meadows of Naboo, it feels like that weight has been lifted a little for the very first time. If you feel like hanging out with Padmé and Anakin in the meadows even more, check out the 10-hour Star Wars lo-fi mix at the end of our video. I love the Clone Wars animated series. This is when Anakin was the most, well, Anakin for me, and the armor he wore on it was just class. So let's draw that in. Anakin's bold tactics and fearless piloting made him the hero of the Republic. But his recklessness often worried Obi-Wan, who constantly tried to balance his friend's raw power with the discipline of the Jedi way. In time, Anakin was given a Padawan of his own, Ahsoka Tano. Training her forced him to grow as a leader, and for a time, Obi-Wan saw the best of the Jedi Knight his former student had become. But the war changed Anakin, years of brutal conflict hardened him, loss, betrayal, and the constant pressure of command fed his anger and impatience with the Jedi Council. Through it all, Obi-Wan remained his closest ally, fighting beside him, trusting him, and believing in the good still within him like a brother. But when Obi-Wan saw the hero of the Republic, others saw something more dangerous. And in the shadows, Palpatine was carefully shaping Anakin into something else entirely. Now this is really fun for me. I am a massive Clone Wars fan, and when we saw Anakin in his Clone Wars armor in the Ahsoka series, I lost it. What a brilliant moment. The Clone Wars designs for the animated show had awesome sleek lines to them that matched the show's style. This all then fills out when we see it in live action. The shoulders are wider, the armor is bulkier, and it looks just as cool. We very rarely get to see his hair this length too, so I had to study the scene from Ahsoka carefully, as it's my job to get these little details right wherever I can. The Clone Wars animated series brought a whole new dimension to Anakin's life. Though reluctantly on his part at the outside, it introduced his Padawan, Ahsoka. That began a tale of their relationship as master and apprentice, as both learned from each other. As his Padawan and friend, Ahsoka believed that Anakin was the greatest Jedi, that his care for her, for his friends, clones, even his droids was his greatest strength. Things are about to get a whole lot darker. We've moved around the image, but we're about to cross over to the dark side. But before that, we've one brief last moment of the light with our drawing of our Jedi Knight. By this time of Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith, the bond between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker had been forged through years of war. At the height of the Clone Wars, the two Jedi launched a daring mission to rescue Supreme Chancellor Sheev Palpatine from the Separatists. During the mission, Anakin defeated and killed Count Dooku, a moment that hinted at the darker path ahead. Back on Coruscant, Anakin's life became increasingly divided. The Jedi Council distrusted him, denying him the rank of Master while secretly asking him to spy on Palpatine. At the same time, Anakin was haunted by visions of his secret wife, Padmé Amidala, dying in childbirth. Fearing he would lose her, Anakin turned to the one man who promised he could stop death itself, Emperor Palpatine, who revealed himself as the Sith Lord Darth Sidious. Believing it was the only way to save Padmé, Anakin betrayed the Jedi Order and became Darth Vader. Obi-Wan could hardly believe it. The brother he had trained, fought beside, and trusted had fallen to the dark side. Their friendship, once unbreakable, was now destined to end in tragedy. Now the boy has become a man. The man who for a very brief moment was about to get that all-elusive seat on the council before everything went just a tad dark. This is the point in our drawing where we switch from the light to the dark. There has to be so much behind the eyes of Anakin here. The battles he's seen, the nightmares of his wife dying, the fate of his mother, things like his trip to Mortis, my favourite Clone Wars episode by the way, those must be hidden deep inside his mind. Here's how we draw an eye. Tip 1, we don't want to end up seeing an oval shape. Sure, it's round underneath the face, but I'm more interested in showing the great shapes that the eyelids and eyelashes make. This shape gives us a much more appealing shape than this oval. Your eyelashes get longer and thicker towards the outer corner of the eye. Instead of drawing a whole bunch of individual eyelashes, I'll clump them together into this one shape that's thicker where the eyelashes should be longer. So another little pro tip, you do that a little bit less on the bottom, thicker on the top. Now for the eyes. We do not want to surround this iris with the white of the eye. You'll only see this when someone's terrified, and Anakin is way too chill for that. So have it underneath the eyelids just like this. Now this is the point where I'll typically draw in an iris like this, with some shading from the top to the bottom. The darker the shading, the more nice highlights I can pop in. But we need an iris that looks like it's brimming with fire. So I'll draw on this dark texture around the edge of the iris like this, leaving this inner part of the iris untouched. This will end up being a bright yellow. That brightness allows contrast for this severely dark pupil. Pretty powerful stuff. It's time to move from drawing a man to drawing a machine as we draw the Dark Lord of the Sith, Darth Vader. After turning to the dark side in Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith, Anakin pledged himself to the Sith Lord Darth Sidious, otherwise known as Treacherous Senator Palpatine, and was given a new name, Darth Vader. Believing it was the only way to save his wife Padmé Amidala, he helped bring about the destruction of the Jedi Order during Order 66. But his fall came at a terrible cost. Confronted by his former master and brother Obi-Wan Kenobi on the volcanic world of Mustafar, Vader was defeated and left horribly burnt and broken. Rescued by Sidious, he was rebuilt inside the black armored suit that would become his prison for the rest of his life. As the enforcer of the Galactic Empire, Vader hunted the surviving Jedi and crushed any resistance to Imperial rule as Obi-Wan went into exile in Tatooine, watching over Vader's hidden son Luke. Across the galaxy, his name became synonymous with fear, yet beneath the mask, despite what he would say, the man Obi-Wan once trained still existed. Decades later, during the events of Star Wars Episode 6 Return of the Jedi, Vader was confronted by his own son, Luke Skywalker. In the end, it was that bond, not power, that finally broke the grip of the dark side, allowing Anakin Skywalker to return and destroy the Emperor. Drawing Darth Vader's helmet could not be more different to what we're doing when we're drawing a human head. We move from organic to inorganic. As I've drawn this helmet a lot now, after maybe Spider-Man, it's the sketch that I get requested the most. So I've been sort of forced to learn all of the different shapes and the relationships that there are between them from memory. So it's all about finding those basic shapes that it's made up from, starting with the large ones and going deeper into the small details. Let's start off drawing Vader by drawing our largest shapes. The top of the helmet is my usual starting point. It's easy enough. It's half of an oval with the sweeping lid that goes right down to the bottom of the head. From here, I'll mark in the ridge of, well, what I call his nose, though of course that's no nose. It's a U shape here. We'll need a triangle here. Simple shapes that lock in the landmarks on the helmet. When these are in place, I can start drawing in some of the harder parts, like these shapes near where the cheekbones would be and the supporting ridges along the bottom. Once these large shapes are in, this gets really easy for me actually. I can fill in all the smaller details with confidence that I know where they should go. A really important part for drawing Vader, especially if he's in pretty much any Imperial building, are all of the reflections on his helmet. This is a shiny surface, and on a Death Star, there are loads of these kinds of lights. We should be showing all of them. Draw in highlights everywhere that curve back around the oval shape as they bend around the form of the helmet. To balance this all out and to continue our theme of light on one side and dark on the other, I'll draw in Vader's TIE Advance as it speeds along the Death Star trench in the OG space chase. I can't think of anything more isolating than the bacta tank that Vader recovers in. On one side, we've got the scenes of him and Padmé at their wedding and in the meadows. And then on the other side, on the dark side, we have him in his pod where he's completely alone. We've had some great Vader moments. The end of Empire Strikes Back is considered one of cinema's most famous scenes. The corridor scene in Rogue One for me was incredible. The stories in the comics like Charles Soule's and Giuseppe Camuncoli's Vader series. These are really powerful moments and they give us an incredible insight into the tortured villain. Ultimately though, as we circle around in this image of the dark side and the light, we reach a point where Vader comes full circle and returns to Anakin when saved by his own son Luke at the end of Return of the Jedi, where Luke's own compassion reaches deep into Vader's soul to find Anakin and to bring him out to the light. To complete this image, we're missing one last piece of the puzzle. Following the tragedy of Revenge of the Sith, for years Obi-Wan lived in hiding on Tatooine, watching over the young Luke Skywalker from the shadows, but the past could not remain buried forever. A decade after the fall of the Republic, the two finally met again during the events of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Their encounter was brutal and deeply personal. Vader burned with rage and betrayal, blaming Obi-Wan for the man he had become. But Obi-Wan ultimately defeated him once more, and in a moment of heartbreaking clarity, realized that the friend he once loved was truly gone. Years later, their final confrontation on the Death Star in A New Hope, there Obi-Wan sacrificed himself, becoming one with the Force. It was their last duel, but the shadow of their doomed brotherhood would echo through the fate of the entire galaxy. We've got Obi-Wan here, then we need the other person who battled for Anakin's fate, Palpatine. With Obi-Wan trying to honor his master's wishes and keep Anakin on the path towards the light, we've Emperor Palpatine, the man who pulled him to the dark side, but who Vader and Anakin defeated to bring balance to the Force. Alright, this is my final pencil image. All that needs to happen now is I need to spend about 8 hours or so inking it. Inking is a skill that really adds a whole new layer of polish and complexity to the whole piece. The thickness of the lines, the sharpness of the edges, and the techniques such as feathering your lines and cross-hatching will take a penciled image and can turn something really good to absolutely great. One thing I'm conscious of with this image is the amount of dark areas that I'm using. Normally you would compose an image around the light and dark areas to lead your eye around the image. Here though, with the light and the dark sides, I'm going to add in more dark shadows as we move from left to right, with the drawings of Anakin's youth left open as line works with subtle hints of shadow, and then as we move to the dark side with Vader, these images will have more shadow, which means more darkness. Once the inks are complete, we're then going to hand off our image to our incredible colorist Rochelle Rosenberg. She's going to bring in her incredible colors to it so we can reveal the final image. Did our drawing finally bring balance to the Force? What are some of your favorite Anakin Skywalker moments? Let us know in the comments, and thank you for tuning into this episode of Star Wars Illustrated. May the Force be with you.